Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Torigno, and this is the first semester exam review for my Geometry C class. Now this video will cover the first page of the review packet that you received in class. This packet, by the way, is the one that you received printed on purple paper in class, just so you know which one I'm looking at here. And you can use these videos in whatever way you think is going to help you the most to prepare for this exam. So maybe there's just one or two questions that you really could use a refresher on. Then you are welcome to skip through the videos until you get to that question and then watch that particular one. Or maybe you feel like you really need that extra preparation and you want to watch the videos beginning to end. That's totally fine too. What I do want to remind you is that this packet is very closely based on what your actual exam will look like. So if you can get to the point where you can do these questions like upside down and inside out so that you know them, in your sleep, you will be more than prepared for your exam. Okay, that's really the point that I want you to get to. Okay, so let's start with questions 1 through 5 here. And questions 1 through 5, I'll use this diagram up here at the top of the page. I've taken this diagram and blown it up so that we can see it a little bit better on the screen. And the first question from our packet says, name this plane in 3 different ways. Well, there are a couple of different ways to name a plane. The easiest way is to look for this letter written in sort of a script font. That means that we can just name the plane with that single letter. For example, we could call this plane P. So back here, I'm going to write one of my answers for number 1 is plane P. Okay? Other than that, the only way to name a plane is to name 3 non-collinear points. That means I want to name 3 points that are somewhere on this plane, but I don't want all 3 of those points to be in a straight line. So for example, I could not say CAB for naming my plane. I could, however, say CAD. Okay, so I could say plane CAD. Or I could say, let's see, I could say DAB. That would work too. And by the way, the order of those points doesn't matter. So if you had written plane ABD, that would be okay too. Okay, when you're naming a plane, the order that you name the points in does not matter. Let's see if there's any other way we could go here. I wouldn't want to use point E because point E is not on the plane. You see this dotted line shows you that that point is actually underneath the plane. And then remember, I can't use C, A, and B because those are all in a straight line. So I think those are our only options. Okay, so that does it for question number 1. Question number 2 wants you to name 3 points that lie on plane P. Well, we sort of already did that up here when we had to name our points to name the plane. But I want you to, looking at this picture, notice that all 4 of these points, A, B, C, and D, lie on that plane. Okay? So any of those points would work. I'm going to go ahead and list all 4, even though I realize that it only asks for 3. Okay? All of those points lie somewhere on plane P. Question number 3 is a little bit trickier, but we actually already talked about it. It says name a line that is not on plane P. Well, if you look at your diagram, this line and this line are clearly on plane P. This line, though, that runs up and down through the middle, actually sort of goes through the middle of the plane. It's like sticking up from the plane and then going down below. So this is the line that I want to name. And again, I knew that because of this dotted line. This dotted line shows me that that line does not actually lie in this plane. Now let's talk about how we can name a line. If you're given just a single letter like this, you can name a line with just that single letter from the end. And usually that will be a lowercase letter. So for example, I could call that line M for my answer. The other way I could name that same line and again, I'm talking about the same line, just a different way to name it, would be to pick 2 points on that line. So the 2 points on this line are A and E. And I could say AE and use the symbol for a line, which is a line with 2 arrows up above those 2 letters. You have to use the arrows if you're talking about a line. Otherwise, you'll be talking about a segment. Okay? Question number 4. Name the intersection of line M and plane P. Intersection means where do they meet? So again, I want you to picture this. This is like a flat piece of paper, and this is a line going up and down through the center of that paper. And this point right here is the point where that line is going to go through the plane. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off-centered there. So this point right here is where that line is going to go through the center of that plane. So the intersection of this line and this plane would be point A. Oops. Okay. Again, intersection is asking about where they meet. And then the last question on this page, and the last question about this diagram, is asking you to name a ray with end point A. Remember, a ray is like a segment that extends in one direction only. So I want somewhere that I can start at point A and then extend on forever. And there's actually 4 different places I could do that. I could go from here in this direction. I could go from here in this direction, from here in this direction, or from here in this direction. Now I'm going to cross this one off my list. And that's because I don't have another point over here that I could name. In order to name a ray, I would have to say that I'm starting at point A and going to another point. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you are thinking that this N represents a point. That N, because it's a lowercase letter, is actually naming this line right here. It's not naming a point. So I wouldn't really have a way to name this ray correctly. But I could name any of these other ones by saying, for example, AC. And that would mean I'm starting at A and going towards C. Or AD means I'm starting at A and going towards D. So here's how I would write that as my answer. And this is the correct symbol for ray as well. I could say ray AC with the arrow above it. Or I could say ray AD with the arrow above it. Or the other one I could even use is ray AB with the arrow above it. Okay? Just make sure that because this is asking for A to be the end point, that A is the first letter that you use. And that's how you show with a ray that that is the end point. Okay? That does it for the first page of your semester exam review. Stay tuned for page 2.